started having children. My grandfather was a musician and a furrier. There's all this talent throughout my family history, I think. I just had a lot of range. There's not any way I could just be one thing.
Right.
And people had mentioned that to me. You know, I did the portraits. It had nothing to do with my stage photographs, but I enjoyed, I was good with people in front of the camera.
Right.
I don't know. I just have, like I said, I have a range that I'm comfortable with, and that I seem to be able to produce work that, you know, resonates with people, or they relate to, or that there's some validity.
Sure.
Although it hasn't been outside of basically Santa Fe or Dallas, when I was used to, you know, basically having a, you know, national, if not international career for a long time.
Right.
And it's okay. I tell people I'm a new artist at 66 years old.
Right.
You know? And I'm enjoying the hell out of it. That's all I can say. And, you know, when you were asking about people I trust, I mean, you know, I do trust. Like, I'm really enjoying more than ever my art dealer. I mean, Erin Cluley, she's very solid. She's very
Sure.
honest about it. But there are, you know, in all honesty, there's issues that an art dealer has to deal with, like, you know, about whether they have to pay the bills, they have
Right.
to sell your work, so they have in mind all the time what collectors or how that is going to succeed.
Right. How do you monetize it?
Yes,
right?
yes, you know, and that's understandable, and you want them to do that.
Otherwise, you're a museum and you're asking for donations.
Exactly, but I trust both of that. I've met a lot of the young artists here, and there's some that I think whose opinions I would trust. This has never happened before. I wasn't used to artists wanting to go to each other's studios a lot.
Right.
But that's a Dallas thing, or I don't know, maybe that's a national thing. No, it didn't happen anywhere else,
right.
or any time before in my experience. So it's really, really nice. You know, and I have very close friends that used to be my art dealers and also an artist, and that's another opinion. So I think everybody needs that. I mean, my family, my kids, they're the hardest.
Right.
They really are. They'll like, no, you know.
Well, they know that regardless of what they say, you're still going to love them, right?
Yeah.
So, you know,
right.
There's that.
I don't think they're always right. But,
right.
And, you know, so, like I say, artists ask people, they know which work isn't working.
Right.
They want someone to go, oh, this is great. And then they're going to go, no, it's not.
Right.
Or they're going to go, someone says, this sucks. And you go, yeah, I know.
Right. Right.
You know?
Yeah, I had listened to a talk you had given a number of years back down at the DMA, along with a set designer. And
that was interesting.
It was interesting. And one of the things that you had said in there was that, you know, one of the tough things about working on a deadline is that it doesn't give you time to ruminate on the finished piece, because, you know, so much, you know, that you were talking about how, you know, given enough time, you'll realize whether there's a certain amount of discomfort with the finished piece, a finished piece of work. And then you yourself can figure out, wait, there's something wrong there. And something that you thought was done and that you loved it, that, you know, given just a little bit of time, you can, you know, self-evaluate.
Yeah, it's called editing,
right.
You know, and that's why I put proof prints up. And when I finish the sculpture, it sits around, and it's a very hard thing that you've worked on. Well, you know, like say the sculptures take a month to make because it's a drying thing with this material.
Right.
You know, it's hard to give it up, but eventually you go, this really does suck. You're right. You know, and you leave it. And there's no better feeling than to throw a piece away. None. Right. To make that decision that it just doesn't work. And I think that's something that younger artists really need to do, is to accept the failures.
Right.
And you know, when asking again about what I thought I was, you know, I think whether people see this left turn or right turn in my work, it's all been a progression.
Right.
There's no way I could be making what I'm making now if I didn't make the thing before it.
Right.
And all those transitional periods. I think there was one when I moved back to Dallas. Mm-hmm. I made work that I thought, this is really cool. This is what I want to do. And then, a few months into it, you're going, no, that's where the hell's this going?
Right.
But then it takes you to the next thing.
Sure.
So all that, I don't know. I don't know how many artists go through this. I think a lot of people come, are young and they just start doing it right out of the bat. I, again, went to a film, just to the film department in North Texas. There was absolutely no art background at all in that department. We didn't, no art history, nothing. It was film history,
right.
One class. And when I maybe this is, and I think this is important. I think everyone in college should take a drawing class, mm-hmm. and they should take. There's a very simple, beginning. It's an elective, I think, a class at North Texas, and it was called Art Appreciation.
Right.
And I can't remember the professor, but it's basically he goes through every stage and every movement and every period in art.
Right.
And when he got to pop art, I'm like, okay, this is what I want to make art now.
Right.
And everyone grasps that at some point.
Sure.
The artist that I'm obsessed with is Picasso, and that's such a simple thing to say, or a simple person to attach to. But my mother took us all to the Fort Worth Modern, and I don't know when that was. It could have been 62, 63, 64. That was my first experience at going to a museum.
Right.
The whole family, we go to Fort Worth to see the Picasso show. Now, I relate that to the first music you hear or become aware of, mm-hmm. is what you pretty much go back to your whole life. Mm-hmm. Luckily, mine was in the 60s. I'm sorry for those in the 80s.
And that's the reason you have a Stratocaster behind your desk.
Well, yes, I do. That's a Telecaster. I have a Stratocaster in the house.
Right.
I play with instruments. People say, do you play them? I go, I play with them. That's the difference. But, because I have friends that sort of became music aware in the 80s. And they're convincing me that was the best music ever made. And you're like, well, I'm shaking my head.
Right.
But it's an argument that will always happen. But it's the first thing you're exposed to. Of course, I'm obsessed with the amount of work this dude made, Picasso. Right. I've been doing these. I've done one drawing when I went to. Because I was into objects, not because I was into objects, because this was an amazing show. The sculpture show at the Museum of Modern Art a couple of years ago, Picasso.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's like a religion. Anybody that saw that, I think all had the same reaction to the amount of production, but also just talk about somebody's guts. There's a feel to everything. There's a personality to every piece. That's what I am attracted to, the personality that comes off of a person onto their work.
Right.
And so I did a blind contour drawing of every piece in that catalog. And so it's just all, you can tell it's his work. It's just because you see certain things. But it's basically just these scribble lines.
Sure.
So now I'm amazed at how much work he made in 1932 in 1 year. So I'm doing this blind contour drawing, and it just looks like scribbles because there's so much work. I'm halfway through the catalog, and I'm hoping that it won't completely block up.
Right.
Because there's so many pieces. It's a good way to learn about someone's work as well. But I'm not sure where that was going, except that how I relate to an artist is if I know that sort of what's inside them or mm-hmm. what they are has landed on the work somewhere.
Well, I think in a lot of ways it's hard for it not to. And even when we try to, even when artists were to, even if an artist were to intentionally try to copy or knock off something,
does that.
I mean, right? There winds up. It's all filtered through your own,
but see, I just
mind and your hand. And
it can be, but I know artists that are amazing draftspeople,
right?
That can make anything, can paint anything, but they also, their first intention is, will this make me famous? Will this be the piece that everyone thinks is great? I saw this and now I want to put this on my work. You're not getting the artist from that.
Right. So sure, you're
getting something else. But even formalist, Ellsworth Kelly, that's coming off of him. I feel that. People can disagree with that all the time. But I've always appreciated that about that minimalist work.
Right.
There's work that is over intellectualized that I don't think has it.
Mm-hmm. And so you feel that the establishment was looking for ways to substantiate, a claim of genius and just kind of dig in there and just kind of add things. I've often felt that way about like literature, where people, will dig in and try to say that there's all sorts of entendre and metaphor. Too many
words in literature.
Right.
I prefer novels.
Right.
And fun and entertainment.
Sure.
I have a good friend and collector who's a bookman, basically. Collection. I said, "What's the difference between literature and these really great books we read?" And I made the joke, like, it always seems like there's just too many words, too long to like describe something.
Right.
I get it.
Right. And so, it's, I think, in that same talk I was watching the other day, you had mentioned along the same line about how, you watch a Scorsese film and you can recognize that it's a Scorsese film. And I think about, like the Coen brothers, I think about Wes Anderson.
Absolutely.
Right. That, I don't know if Wes Anderson does these things intentionally, but, there's, his use of analogous color. There's this use of symmetry, like
symmetry's big with
really big, like, and then just from the stories, there's like this common thread of adults acting like children and children acting like adults, and so I think you can gather I'm a big Wes Anderson fan. But I mean, it's just like
I'm a huge Wes Anderson fan, and Richard Linklater, and I tell you, there's something about Texas artists and Texas filmmakers that there is and I'm not a person that attaches to a place or an old school. I don't have a nostalgic kind of feeling about things. But I do recognize the artists I know in Texas, the filmmakers from Texas, the writers from Texas, they have an approach that's always brave. Mm-hmm. and always, not always, but a lot of times unique. Right. Actors, same way. Actors from here. Look at Rauschenberg. Vernon Fisher. Then my generation. Wes and Richard Linklater. I think he's absolutely brilliant as well. And
for the movie Boyhood, right? Who's going to do that?
I would have. No. I'll tell you what's funny is that's the movie that you look at and go, shit, why didn't I think of that? I wouldn't have, but I wish I would have thought. It was amazing. All of his films are amazing, actually. But you mentioned that I see something recognizable, and that's always, not always, but lately, since I've made the change from, these stagey narrative works that people do or don't recognize it's me. And I don't know why I have to be concerned with that. But then when I look at someone's work like Robert Mangold, you're going to see one and you know it's his. Always. Right. So what? I don't really know what the benefit of that is. I
Right.
don't know that you need to know. I'm not an artist that could be like Donald Judd. You know, I'm not an artist that can like walk in the studio and make something very similar every day, unless it's just
Right.
the way